What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my great co-hosts, Fede Perez, Maria Britos, and Ralph Hanna. And guys, it's been one of the most craziest 7 days. The last 7 days have been one of the most craziest days in Paraguayan football. And yes, it even surpasses when Ronaldinho was in prison not too long ago, because what we've seen from 3 different games have been just ultimately dramatic. You know, we obviously mentioned it last week, how we had this Clausura title decider, this Copa Paraguay final, and obviously as well, this promotion relegation battle between the side from Intermedia and the side from the Primera División, and they've all been insane. It's incredible to see, but obviously we will dissect all of that and talk about what the hell happened over the last 7 days, and I'm excited to talk about this. Fede, I mean, you know, you don't really say what team you support, but I'd imagine that, you know, having a lot of fans from this particular club, that it's been, 4 days since that game? I think some people are still not recovering from the hangover that they had on Saturday. But how are you, man?
I'm good, Roberto. Yeah, it's been a crazy week. You mentioned that Ronaldinho situation back a couple of years ago. This country can surprise you, especially in football. And we had one of those games the other day with Cerro Porteño's last game against Guarani, the last game actually of the Clausura, the second tournament of the year, and Cerro Porteño getting the tie they needed at the end of the game. What a run they had to make. Also, to make it all the way to this last game with the chance to beat Guarani, to take it away from Guarani, because we talked about this the whole season. They pretty much had it almost all the way. They just lost it on those last 2 games. Guarani, what a meltdown, what a crazy situation, how ugly it looked for them. Also, we're going to talk about that, obviously, from the beautiful side, from the happy side, from the football point of view, the reasons to why this team ended up being champion above the rest. Cerro Porteño, congrats to you, Roberto, to Raf, all the Cerristas that obviously come every week here to Guarani Vision to know about what's going on our Paraguayan football. We definitely need to talk about Olimpia also, because I'm hearing you talk about Cerro Porteño, but, you know, Olimpia also had their championship and not too long ago, being champions of the Copa Paraguay. And looking back at this team, how they had their year, I mean, to see them finish up the 2021 season with these kind of joy, with these kind of happiness, and it's just amazing with these kind of achievements after all the crisis they lived, especially the financial crisis, and now the players getting these titles, and now having the opportunity to play against Cerro Porteño for the first time in this new cup, which is the Supercopa, which is going to be played for the first time here in Paraguay. It's totally new, and we have the 2 most popular teams going up against each other. I mean, it's one of our last episodes. I think it's going to be our last episode this year for Guarani Vision, and we still have games ahead of us. We still have football around us. Even Nelson Aedo is going to have a tribute game on the 18th of December. So we still have a lot of football between us here in Paraguay. Christmas is right around the corner. New Year's is almost here, but we still have a lot of games. We still have a lot of stuff that needs to be decided. Even one of Ralph's teams, Luqueño, is not looking well. We're going to talk about promotion. We're going to talk about which teams could be in next year in the first division, because that's also needs to be decided this upcoming weekend.
Absolutely. And, you know, obviously, yes, we do have to mention a special shout out from the team from Parauno, Maria in particular, our Olimpista here at Guarani Vision, tough winning the Copa Paraguay. And it was, of course, in the most dramatic ways, I would say. It was one of those games where, you know, that kind of Olimpia spirit had to come about. It was giving me, I had that kind of deja vu moment from how they won the Clausura last year. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, it's going to happen again for these guys, aren't they? But congratulations to Maria. And, you know, I think, yeah, I mean, Fede said it. I mean, in a year that's been one of the worst in their history, you already have them winning this title that they've never won before. And, you know, obviously it allows them to be even much more stronger historically. But now if they can do it 2 times, winning 2 new titles that they've never won before, and one of them against their bitter rivals, I mean, that provides some sort of balance in what's been really a very bad year for Olimpia, don't you think, Maria?
Yeah, it's I think it'll be one of the probably the best years yet. Winning 2 titles back to back, and besides what you said, having one of their worst years that I've ever seen, at least. And especially if they can do it against Cerro Porteño, then that will be, I think, the cherry on top of everything. Besides, the struggles that they had this whole entire time, the bad, the bad semester that they had, the bad economic situations that they've been going through, which, by the way, apparently they're going to be asking fans for money now. So that's some news circulating in the news. But I think that it'll be something, I guess, a light in the tunnel for them, because it's been such a rough year for them, like I've been saying, and for not just for them, but for the fans as well. So it'll be a good thing. And I really hope that they can actually win this Supercopa, and all the best to them.
I mean, it's weird how you say that, how you have one of the worst years and yet they could still finish the year winning 2 titles, where for any team in Paraguay, at least, that's a success. I mean, that's one that would be a wonderful year for them. And here comes Olimpia with this kind of weird year, and they could end up with 2 titles. It's crazy. And what's even more crazy, going to Ralph on this one, is that how a historic team like Fede mentioned, Sportivo Luqueño, could indeed fall on bad terms if they do not win this promotion relegation time against a side. It's called Sportivo Ameliano, a side in Asuncion, a side that hasn't been into the top division in quite a long time, or never. I think I don't remember the last time they went, but it would be a huge shock for them to do that. And Fede, obviously you can elaborate later when we speak about them, but it's now or never for Sportivo Luqueño if they want to keep their legacy and what has been one of their rough years as well, on the anniversary, no less, of their centenary.
Yeah, it's well, for Luqueño, it's been a rough 2 or 3 years, which is how they got into this position, because the way relegation, of course, is done in Paraguay is it's your average points over 3 seasons or 3 calendar years. So it had been coming, but I think there was always this feeling that, it can't happen, almost too big to go down. The last time Luqueño played in Intermedia, or it wasn't called Intermedia then, but the second division was 1969. So they've been up there, since then. Who have gone down, Libertad have been down there pretty much, other than Cerro, Olimpia, Guarani. I think they've all gone down at some point since 1969. So Luqueño is really it's a huge club in that respect, even though they don't win many titles. But it's also a huge club in terms of the supporters, and the fans are going to be furious if they go down. I mean, people more recently will remember when River Plate got relegated, and the scenes, that the crowd trouble afterwards. That's going to happen. This is not condoning violence or promoting this. This will just happen because it is going to happen. It is a fact if they were to be relegated. So this is it's a very precarious situation. Luque have taken a huge gamble today, by the way. They've brought in a manager specifically for that game. So Miguel Ángel Zazu, who was very popular with Luqueño, he last managed them back in 2009. He's come back to help Badacayo Maciel, who's been the guy guiding them through as always a kind of interim manager, but now Zazu has come in for this final game, the showdown against Ameliano on Saturday, which they are leading 3-2. They were actually 3-1 up until Marcelo Palau scored quite late on, so it could have been even worse for Luque, the situation going into Saturday. And then just one other thing you said Sportivo Ameliano never been in Primera. I think you might be right. It's a very small club. They're based in the kind of Barrio Jara region of Asuncion. It's this tiny stadium. I've been to a couple of games there. People's houses are on the back, so if the ball goes over too high, it's like into somebody's back garden. It's that kind of thing. But the president of Luqueño said today that they're essentially a club de barrio. So I think the easiest term in English translation is like almost like a Sunday league team or a pub team, and said there's no place for them in top division, which again I thought was fighting words when you're about to go into this showdown, and in theory they could be going up. So yeah, this is a huge battle on Saturday. There's so much at stake here, and I think we're going to see something. Either way, it's going to be another nerve-wracking game, following on from what you were talking about, Copa Paraguay final, and of course the Cerro-Guarani finale at the weekend.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, and like I said, I think the memes on the internet would be really crazy from those phrases if Luqueño do indeed go down. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. But guys, let's obviously talk about the main elephant in the room, and that's obviously the 2-2 game between Guarani and Cerro. And you know, it reminded me of that dramatic win. Obviously, this was a win and not a draw, but when Manchester City won the Premier League in 2012, kind of the same vibe, you would say, where it all seemed lost for City and they weren't going to win the league. And then it comes in a dramatic game winner in this sense, Aguero's goal. The same thing happened, of course, in this game. So obviously, for those that didn't know, Cerro Porteño took on Guarani in the final day of the Clausura. The fact that this game actually was going to happen regardless, the fact that this was pure coincidence that both these two sides were participating and fighting for the league title on the final day was pure coincidence. But needless to say, they came into this final game with Cerro taking a 2-point lead to put them top of the table. And this is despite the fact that Guarani was leading the league for 15 of the 17 match days, meaning that Guarani needed to go into this match with a win, and Cerro only needed to avoid defeat to become champions. And it all started absolutely great for the Guarani side, taking the lead early on after, they were down, Cerro were down to 10 men with Alan Benitez being sent off before Alfio Oviedo scoring the opening goal in the 36th minute. It came worse for Guarani in the 51st minute, for Cerro, when Marcelo Gonzalez scored. 2 assists, by the way, from Jose Colman, former Orlando City player, who, despite them not winning, had a really good game. Obviously, also a former Cerro player as well. And when it all seemed lost, then came into this weird moment around extra time, where basically what happened was they were sent off with 9. Guarani were sent off with 9 men, and you saw Robert Fernandez and goalkeeper Gaspar Cerrillo sent off. And because Guarani had used all of their players, Marcos Cáceres, another former Cerro Porteño player, came in as a makeshift goalkeeper. And with 11 minutes of extra time being added, that's where Cerro Porteño took the lead and took advantage. Alberto Spinola scored in the 99th minute to make it 2-1. And just a few seconds, literally, I think 3 seconds from the end of extra time, Spinola whipped in across and allowed Juan Patiño to head home the equalizer to give Cerro Porteño the 2021 Clausura title and to break the hearts of all the Guarani fans that were in attendance. I mean, it was one of the most dramatic games I've ever seen. Even watching soccer, we've all watched our fair of soccer, but needless to say, in this league as well, I've never seen a game like this. I mean, Fede, where to begin? How did this happen? Was it Guarani just absolutely self-collapsed? Did Cerro not give up and continue to fight? I mean, what can you put into words of what we saw over there at Dos Bocas?
Well, first of all, just listening to you narrate everything that happened from beginning to finish, it's just crazy. And congratulations to you, because it's really hard to explain everything that happened. And so much happened. The referee had so much to do, had so much work, and the players don't collaborate either. I mean, right from the get-go, right when the game started, Cerro Porteño had a player sent off. They had problems, and he was correctly sent off. Alan Benitez, who had been very important for Cerro Porteño, and he looked like he was going to be somebody to point at after the game, right? Because he was leaving his team with only 10 players. And but then you saw Josue Colman, Alfio Oviedo take over, and you thought, oh, they're going to be the stars of this game. They're going to take away the final for Guarani. Look at Guarani; they're so strong. They're winning the game 2-0. They have it, and Guarani had the party set up. They took Cerro Porteño to their stadium. They had more fans on stands, and it looked like it was for Guarani, really. Up to that situation, past 90 minutes, Cerro Porteño, never let their guard down. I think they always tried to do it with their style, but it was just not happening for them that night. I mean, Guarani looked better, just to be honest with you guys. I was actually kind of in shock that Guarani was taking it that easily, that Cerro Porteño was not able to score. And even though it was a great match, even though it was a great battle, just as we thought it was going to be, I thought it was going to be way tight. It was going to be more tight during 90 minutes. But, you know, the final was just crazy. And what happened with Gaspar Servio, the Guarani goalkeeper, his reputation was never good. And this situation that happened during the last moments with him trying to take advantage, bringing a player that was injured back to the pitch when he wasn't supposed to do that, getting a second yellow card when he knew that he already had a first yellow card, and not taking care of that situation. And another Guarani player, Roberto Choco Fernandez, going after the ref and saying something that he shouldn't have said and getting another yellow card and getting sent off. I mean, that was a crazy moment for Guarani. They didn't know how to handle it. And Cerro Porteño just took over in their style, right? I mean, Cerro Porteño, they don't call him the Ciclón for nothing. And if you guys don't know what that means, you got to look it up, because that's what Cerro Porteño is all about. Cerro Porteño has much history behind this team, behind this club, of situations like this. I mean, that's why they're called the Ciclón of Barrio Obrero, because they do this in 2-3 minutes. They do this in 5 minutes, but they get it done. And they had a run to deserve it also. I mean, the run to this game, and especially the way they handled the situation those last minutes, they did it way better than Guarani for sure, because Guarani lost their head. But I want to hear the rest of you guys, because there's so much to talk about this match itself.
There's so much to talk about. Just the last, I don't know, like those last few minutes. It's been 5 days. I still can't really. It's really hard to analyze, because it was just so, like you were saying, Fede, it was so against the run of play, because Guarani were totally in control. They were playing the perfect game against the 10 men of Cerro, that they were so good on the break, on the counter-attack. So you had, even when Cerro were looking to get back into the game in, let's say, in the 70th minute or the 75th minute, let's say, then it was too dangerous for them to attack, because Guarani was so close to the third goal. So you had Fernandez. He hits the post, I remember. Everything was so dangerous. Even the second goal for Guarani comes after Cerro have hit the bar from a corner. Cerro have a corner, then I think it's Claudio Aquino hits the bar, and then it's a breakaway and they score. So there was just no way you could see Cerro coming back, because taking the risks to attack was almost too dangerous. And by the end of it, Cerro are doing everything they're doing in the attack has no sense, because Beto Espinola is meant to be a right back, and he's actually in the box to score the first goal. And that comes after he had a header that's well saved by Cáceres. So he's playing almost as a center forward, which makes no sense. And then at the very end, you have Patiño as a central defender. He's like at the far post as a striker, and he heads in the equalizer. It's also chaotic, but it was this perfect storm and perfect chaos that worked for Cerro in the strangest way for a team of Chiquiase is doing, because Chiquiase is all about a rigid team. It's the best defense in the league. They only conceded 8 goals all season, and they were all built on this really well drilled system, really well organized. And they had to throw it all out the window and go for broke in these final moments, and it worked, and it somehow worked. The one thing that I think where Arce really did get it right is it's very clever that it's his substitutes Morales and Enzo Jimenez end up playing almost as central midfielders in that last bit of craziness in those final 5-6 minutes. And they were substitutes. And I think he realized, okay, he maybe instructed them to say, well, you're the fittest because you've just come on and everybody else is tired and there's not much space. So play more in the middle where you have fresher legs, because it is Roberto Morales who you see, or Robert Morales, sorry, who you see beats the player to give the pass to Beto Espinola. He's there in the middle. And so maybe that's the one bit of tactical genius, but really otherwise it's a really hard game to analyze. That's why I think we enjoy football so much, because it was beyond belief. There's no way this should have happened, and it won't happen again for another 100 years. I don't think we will see a finish like that again.
I think you are so right, Ralph. And this was definitely one of those finals that was sort of like a movie, because it's just so unbelievable. And I still think that Chiguiar's son had something to do with it. I'm very, superficial, and I like to bring those things in, because I think that it does play in hands, luck and miracles. I think it definitely played a part in this final for Cerro Porteño. And it was such an unbelievable game, just the way that it ended. 9 players against the whole team, and out of nowhere 2 goals. Like, it was just unbelievable to me. And I don't think there's anything else to analyze, like you guys were saying, other than the fact that there was luck and miracle in this game. And I just think that it beats all the remontadas out there in the world that I've seen, at least in my opinion, because this was as if in Paraguay you couldn't find any more drama. This was the most dramatic final ever, and there's just no other way to say it. There's no words for it. But go ahead.
No, finish. Go ahead. Finish it.
No, it was just my finishing thoughts.
No, I think, for both sides, even the ones that were on the losing side for Guarani, they're thinking to themselves, how the hell have we slipped this up? I mean, I'm no psychologist or anything like that, but I'm sure mentally, in fact, I'm sure you can know this better than all of us. Well, all of us have an opinion, but I'm sure, like, mentally, that these guys are distraught even to this day. Gaspar Cerillo was talking about how I think this was his last game for Guarani. He's going to leave. I just can't imagine what someone like Fernando Cubero in his shoes, like, not saying he won't recover for this. I think he will. I think he's a professional and whatnot, but just for some of these players, the young players, a lot of these players who were doing so much, and the fact that it was at their home crowd, it just felt like it was the perfect game for them, and it just fell to pieces. So not even just on how miraculous Cerro have been in this situation and what they've done and to achieve that, you just have to feel for Guarani and the players and the fans and those that work for the club. Just how the hell have they slipped this up? And people can say conspiracy. I mean, you probably have seen that on Twitter about how the referee was a bit favorable to one side over the other. Anyone can make their own decisions based on interpretation, but how can we, I know how you said that regardless of who was going to win this Clausura, that the loser was going to recover for this, but I think from the way that this happened, it's going to take a while for them.
Yeah, they're going to have to do some cleaning up, right? Especially with Gaspar Servi's situation, just because of how much of a villain he ended up being in this game, and most of the fingers being pointed at the goalkeeper just because of that being such a special spot. And when he was sent off, you had to put in a field player there in the goal, and I think that was the big issue for Guarani, because you needed Marcos Cáceres to be there in the center back, heading those balls away from the box. And then you had Fernandez, who was also center back. You lost him too, so you didn't have your center backs in the most important moment of the match. But that was because you had lost your goalkeeper, and because Gaspar Servio tried to be more clever than everybody, and you have cameras all over the place, you have VAR on top of you. I mean, you can't be doing this stuff in 2021. Nobody wins matches like this anymore, and everybody's looking at you. You can't do this. So obviously he's one of the big responsibles for this situation. But it's always like that for goalkeepers. I don't want to go too hard on him, just because sometimes the goalkeepers suffer this situation. I mean, we're going to talk about Olimpia in a bit, and almost the same thing happened with Gaston Almeida there, who had a really bad 90 minutes, but then was the star on the penalty shootout. Gaspar Serbio was not going to have a penalty shootout. He was just trying to make time for his team because it was already on top of the 90 minutes. But, right now they're saying he's not going to stay in the club, that he needs to leave because, it's not going to be easy for the fans. It's not going to be easy for the locker room to bring him back, to welcome him back, especially because of the reputation he has already. He has a very strong character also. So, and he's not Paraguayan either. He's from Argentina, and there's always that situation also on the locker room. He was not very liked, I think, by everybody in the Paraguayan game, and he had trouble back when he had just come to Paraguay. I remember when he just arrived here, when he was playing with Sol de America, because that was his first team. He had an issue with the coach because he told him that he wanted to be the starter, he wanted to play, and if he wasn't going to play, he didn't even want to be on the team. So he had those kind of situations before. We've had examples of him not behaving the best way, but he was having a great tournament. I mean, if we're going to talk about one of the best players in Guarani, he was actually being one of the best players of Guarani. He was a very important player for this Guarani run. But unfortunately, he's probably going to have to leave the club because of this whole situation and how it turned up for him. And then you have the situation of their coach. You just mentioned Fernando Jubero. I think we talked about it on the last episode. What is it, the fourth time this happened to him? With Guarani especially. I mean, this is something that he was wanting very badly, a title with Guarani on their home ground, and it didn't happen for him either this time. So it has to be a big blow for them. But they're going to play the Libertadores next year. They're going to have their situation with trying to get a local league title again. This is a team that's been playing finals these last years. I mean, we've gotten accustomed to seeing Guarani make it to the last stages, even though they don't have the same budget as Cerro Porteño. They don't have the same budget as Olimpia or Libertad, but Guarani's always there. They played finals of Copa Paraguay. They played finals of local leagues titles also, but unfortunately for them, it just hasn't been, they just haven't been able to clinch the titles. If not, we would have been talking about a much more successful era of Guarani right now. But yeah, it was an ugly scene. Just it was kind of weird actually. I didn't have to be happy for Cerro Porteño because you had Chiquiaz's situation there. You had the players, just how it ended up for them because it was totally sour, and then it turned out to be totally happiness. And then you had the other side. You saw Guarani fans just dropping tears, just crying all over the place, and just holding their heads, just screaming. I mean, just having those kind of reactions to a crazy end of a game, and especially because they thought they really had it, just winning 2-0. They were making party plans, Roberto. It was Saturday night, and most of the Guarani fans were already making plans where they were going to go party, where they were going to go with their friends, and all of a sudden, they just wanted to go home and go to bed because they couldn't believe what happened to them.
Like the old saying goes, never celebrate until it's over. It isn't over till it's over, as Yogi Berra said. But yeah, I think it's going to be a weird situation to see how Guarani recovers, and we'll see how they do in the Libertadores and how they tackle 2022 as well. But for Cerro, I think, like rightly so. I think, I've said this before to you guys in a group chat that win or lose, whoever was going to win, we have a deserved champion. Cerro Porteño had done an incredible rise. The fact that they had gone the majority of the season not even in contention for this title, and they go and do so in the most dramatic way, I think is a perfect ending to a crazy Clausura title. And switching gears now to what's happening to the other side, and the other side I'm talking about is the side at Para Uno in Olimpia, who have done a situation where they make it difficult to themselves again, despite them winning their first ever Copa Paraguay. It wasn't in the easiest ways. They were losing 2-1 at halftime thanks to Javier Toledo scoring for Sol de America, a brace for him before Derlis Gonzalez, a player that Maria, you had mentioned, that would be very much a vital player. And, he's scoring in these type of games in the Copa Paraguay. Ralph has also said it as well. he does so in the final, and ultimately it leads to another penalty shootout where Olimpia win 3-1 on the day to give them their first title of the 2021 season. And I think because of this, I think they have to feel motivated now heading into this game against Cerro Porteño in the Supercopa. I think because of the way that they've done it in both circumstances, you would say, they obviously Cerro did it in a more dramatic way, but I think Olimpia still did it in a dramatic way to win it on penalties and to come back from 2-1 down. I think this title was something that they desperately needed. And I think that boost of motivation that they need is something that can help them heading into Sunday.
Definitely, Roberto. And it was, like I said, there's always drama in Paraguay. And of course, there's going to be drama surrounding the top two teams in the country, which is Cerro and Olimpia. And, winning the Copa Paraguay, as well as qualifying for the Libertadores once again, just brings such a boost of confidence, like you said, for this team. But they still have a lot of work to do. It's not just, they did very well job in winning these games and all that. But, now that they have to face Cerro Porteño for the Supercopa, it's going to be a tougher game. They're going to have to figure out, what they did wrong in the last few times that they faced Cerro Porteño and fix those in order for them to actually win them. Although I do see it as of right now, I do see it very difficult for Olimpia to win this game against Cerro Porteño. They are the champions right now, and they have been such a great team throughout the entire Clausura. So, compared to Olimpia, Cerro, it's just, in the table, Cerro was here, Olimpia was down here. So they're gonna have to do a lot of work. There is some hope. I believe that those players that were out of the game for the Clausura against Guarani are gonna play, or they're not gonna play. I think I was reading that they decided that they won't play, if I'm correct. So that's some hope for Olimpia as of right now, but still it's not much. They do have to put a lot of work, and they need to just have more faith, I guess. Continue on the good games that they've had, and just hope for the best, I guess.
Well, firstly, I think nobody's sure if they're going to play, or if people can play or not play. It's one of those things that no one has decided at the FA yet. We might find out. Well, we'll have to find out before the game itself. I wonder if for Cerro, though, I wonder if they will have a huge hangover, in some cases quite literally, but that kind of emotional hangover from the Guarani game, right? Because that was such a huge moment for them. They've celebrated it so hard. Of course, it's a Clásico, it's still a big game, but they might feel like they've done the big job, and this is more to go and enjoy themselves and see what happens with the results. Whereas Olimpia feel they have more to prove. I mean, they've proved a lot now, right? They got past Libertad in the semifinals. They got past Sol in the final to win the title. It's interesting that between the semifinal and the final, they lost to Sol and Libertad in the league. So in the big games, they were managing to get the results. And then they had the massive game against Nacional, which came 3 or 4 days after the Copa Paraguay final, and they won that too. So they're kind of going their proving points, and maybe this is one more tick for them. So it's hard to, I mean, a Clásico is always a big game, of course. Both teams will be motivated, but I wonder if Olimpia do have a little bit more feeling that for once they're the underdogs, which is, I think, quite a rare situation for Olimpia to be in. Especially because Cerro have got the better of them in the Clásicos in the regular season, let's say, or in the league games this year. So it will be interesting to see. And again, you have man for man, you have enough talent. Olimpia have enough talent to match Cerro. Where they were lacking earlier in the season in the games they've lost is the organization. I think is the tactical organization that Chiquiase gives you, and you had this Olimpia disorganized, and also they had issues that we know about, the financial issues. Maybe players weren't being paid at certain times of the year. We found that out as well today. With it was even happening with Guarani, because I think Servio did let that slip in an interview he gave today. So there were all those factors, but this is like that one big game to see off the year. So I don't know if we're doing predictions at this stage, Roberto, but I'm sure he's going to ask us. But I would say again, maybe Olimpia sneak this one like they did the Copa Paraguay final.
Interesting, and I guess that's a good way. Go ahead, Fede. No, go ahead.
No, but we're gonna have penalties if nobody wins this on the 90 minutes, and it actually has worked for Olimpia lately, also, right? And Olimpia, I kind of got used to see Olimpia do very well in these kind of matches, on the knockout, on one-on-one matches, and that's how they got their title last year, and it's almost the same team. That's how they got the title of the Copa Paraguay against Sol de America, just taking that to the penalties. They got to the finals, beating Libertad also on penalties. So, you're expecting for Olimpia to give you a battle, just because this team is looking a little bit better with their new coach also. And they have all this confidence built up because they made it to the Libertadores now. They got the Copa Paraguay, and now it's Supercopa. The first time it's been played, Roberto. Super champion. That's what it sounds to me. And you have the two biggest teams of the Paraguay game go up against each other. And there's not much to go after. But just that the two big teams are going up against each other, because there's no prize money. This cup doesn't give you the chance to play at the stage group of the Libertadores. It doesn't give you any kind of advantage for next year's tournaments, but it gives you prestige, right? It makes you say that you beat one of the best teams of the year, because the teams that are playing this Supercopa are the champions of the champion that made the most points during the year, and the champion of the Copa Paraguay. So that's why it's being Supercopa. That's why we're going to have a super champion at the end of the year. That's the intention behind this new tournament, behind this new prize. But there's not much more than that to go after. Thankfully, it is a Cerro Porteño Olimpia, so I do think we're going to have a big stage, and players are really going to want this game, even though besides what Ralph was saying, right, that Cerro Porteño, obviously, I just ran into one of the players today. He was having an ice cream. I mean, the players are already on vacations. I mean, the players are already laid back. They already got the championship. They already got the trophy they wanted. Now they're just going to enjoy themselves and play this last game before really hitting the beach, before really probably just having the vacations with their families.
Yeah, but let's not forget that it is against their bitter rivals, and how things go on when it comes to bragging rights. And obviously the internet is such a popular tool that if Cerro do indeed lose this, Olimpia fans are going to mock them, especially because of the year that Olimpia have had. It's like it will be difficult for them to. Maybe they won't be as bothered. Everyone's different on how they view themselves, but at the end of the day, Fede, it is a title. It is something that is there to win. It's done in Europe. It's done in many parts of the world where they do this kind of Supercopa thing. So yeah, I guess Ralph, I guess we'll go in here and go for our predictions. Obviously, we have to go ladies first and go for Maria on this one. Who wins the Supercopa de Paraguay on Sunday?
You know what? I was gonna say Cerro earlier, but I've changed my mind after hearing Ralph and Fede, and I kind of agree with the fact that Cerro Porteño might be having more of a laid back attitude, and Olimpia might take the advantage, and they do perform well in finals and very definitive games like this. So I'm gonna go with Olimpia, and I'm gonna say they'll win by penalties. So
it seems like their custom, isn't it, to win by penalties? So might as well continue that tradition. Ralph, certainly it's always a tight game between these two. especially when it comes to a maiden tournament, who wins the first ever Supercopa de Paraguay at the Defensores?
I'm also going Olimpia. Straight off the bat, especially actually Fede's ice cream story is just, I had the theory that the players might be relaxed, but Fede's given me some hard evidence there. So I'm going with Olimpia. I think I could see like a 1-0, 2-1 kind of game. And it would be a nice win for Julio Cesar Cáceres again over Chiquiase, because of course they were teammates. They used to be teammates back in the Paraguay national team and that kind of thing. So there's all these extra narratives. We talk about this being a big rivalry. There's always these stories in there. But I think Olimpia, they have this point to prove, the underdogs, and I think they'll go for it. Underdogs, by the way, just to clarify that, in terms of this year, of course. I'm not saying they are a smaller team than Cerro, because then I would be killed on social media. But yeah, but for this year, they're definitely going in as the underdogs.
Fede, if you want to continue on this tradition of making predictions and going in for the majority, all on you. But we know how this show has been so far, and for you and your predictions, it's not been so hot so far. So be careful what you say. But having said that, who lifts the Supercopa on Sunday?
Yeah, just because of everything you just said, Roberto, I know I haven't done that well. I usually get one right and one wrong. That's how usually I've done, right? Last week it was just like that. I said Olimpia went forward. I said Guarani didn't get it. It was Cerro Porteño. So that's usually my predictions. I usually get one right and one wrong. This time I'm gonna go with Cerro Porteño. I think Cerro Porteño has been the better team this year. They have the football, even though I do think Olimpia is getting better right now. Right at the end of the year, they have their best players on their top form. Ale Silva, Derdis Gonzalez, you have Roque Santa Cruz, who's playing like he couldn't do in the whole year, and he's a very important player. If you have Roque Santa Cruz, I mean, that's a totally different player. I think he can make the difference. Also, he scored against Nacional, the first goal during the weekend. So obviously Olimpia is gonna make a battle. They're gonna make it hard for Cerro Porteño, but I do think Cerro Porteño have style. They played it the whole year, and they have one of the best defense I've seen in the Paraguayan game. Also with Alexis Duarte, with Juan Patiño back there, and Olimpia don't have that. Olimpia has been the team that has conceded the most goals during this second half of the year. So I think that's going to be the key factor. And Cerro Porteño with Robert Morales coming in, taking over for certain moments. And I do think they're going to enjoy this game. And, they played 4 times during this year. And I think out of those 4 times, 3 times, Cerro Porteño won. So I'm going to go with the obvious, and I'm going to say Cerro Porteño is going to win the Super.
Well, we're going to be at a split decision yet again for another weekend, because I think because of this kind of dramatic win, and I think Olimpia have every right to be motivated on the way that they did midweek. But having said that, I think, this side is very consistent. I think this side has demonstrated very well under Chiqui Arce that they are able to get the results, and that they don't give up. I think we saw that be very much apparent on the weekend. So I think I'm expecting a tight result. I think, all of us are expecting a tight game, being it's a Super Classico and being it's a final. So all those factors come into place. I do see a penalty shootout, and I do see Cerro also coming in victorious to win their first ever Supercopa de Paraguay. So obviously keep an eye on what's going to happen on Sunday. Also on the weekend, guys, and we forgot to mention as well, our Paraguayans here in the United States will be playing for the MLS Cup. New York City FC of Jesus Medina will be taking on the Portland Timbers of Christian Paez. Both these players have been doing so well for their sides. None of them have ever won the MLS title before, so best of luck to both of them. And we'll see who lifts their first ever MLS Cup title on the weekend. Game will be in Portland, so keep an eye for that on Saturday. As we switch gears to our final segment, and this one is the one that I think, like you said, Ralph, could indeed break a city or give a city a bit of relief, because it's all eyes are on Luque at this moment. Obviously, this game against Sportivo Ameliano. And, Fede, obviously you can bring up your perspective on them being a side that you've obviously watched in the Intermedia, but I'll go to Ralph first on this one, because I think in the situation that they are, in a desperate situation, losing that game 3-2, I think puts them in a very difficult spot. But do you think that Sportivo Luqueño recover for this, or do you feel that after all the chaos that had been going on, that this was bound to happen? And like you said, no team is big enough to go down. But I think this might be the case for Luqueño if they don't get it right on the weekend.
But I was really surprised by not just the result and that Ameliano won, but the style of game, that it was such an open game. I mean, we have 5 goals, a 3-2. And the coach of Sportivo Ameliano is Humberto Garcia, who really made his name with General Diaz when they were in Primera. And General Diaz was like a more defensive kind of team and more organized. And so I expected them not to go into this game maybe as expansive as they did. And I didn't think we'd see a game with all these kind of goals. And it was very open, and it was quite a high tempo as well, I thought. I also thought Luqueño, again, a bit like we were talking about Olimpia, they have problems. They've had so many issues off the pitch, changes in coaches. But Luqueño's actually team in terms of some of that quality is very good, like Marcelo Palau. You have Borja, who's a very talented player. Aldo Vera's hugely experienced in midfield. So I kind of thought surely they will have enough to at least not be overrun. But there was a time when to that point when they went 3-1 down, I was like, wow, Luqueño they look lost. They're in trouble here. Ameliano have a really good player, which I'm sure Fede can tell us more about, called Alex Arce, who was a top scorer in Intermedia, and he scores a wonderful goal. It's the second goal for his team in that game, where he takes it on his chest and like kind of scissor kicks in. He came through at Cerro Porteño, but he got injured. He got a really bad like cruciate ligament injury just before he should have made his debut. So that's how he's ended up in Intermedia, but because he's now 25, 26. But he's a very, very exciting player, and they had quality. Ameliano, they looked good on the ball and going forward, which I wasn't really expecting to see. I thought they would be a much more kind of defensive styled counter-attack team. So in terms of what this means for Saturday, it's going to be really tough for Luqueño, because I do think Humberto Garcia is a better coach at defending games. So now he's 3-2 up. He can just try and see out the game and defend it. So it puts him in a quite strong position. I'm not ready to make a prediction yet, so I'll pass it over to Fede to get his thoughts. But yeah, I was surprised by the game and the style.
Yeah, pass it over, Rob, because you're about to cry, man. I feel your pain, man. I feel Luqueño going down there to Intermedia to the second division. I honestly can't believe this is happening to a giant, a very popular team. I mean, this is a team that has a whole city and a big city here in Paraguay behind them. But I don't think they're really behind this team right now. I don't think they're really behind the club itself. I mean, this is a club that has had so many issues that I would even say it kind of got the backlash of the FIFA gate even situation here in South America, because it's on the same city where the CONMEBOL is, and a lot of their board members were linked in some certain time to financial situations, but also stuff that needed to be investigated and was never investigated. And the club was always the victim. I think I've said this before during this year also, when you could see that eventually this could happen to Luqueño, that they were going to have a bad year just because it's happened to them the last couple of years. I mean, Luqueño has been able to slip away in those last games from this relegation. Before it happened to them last season, it happened to them the season before that. I mean, this is something that unfortunately has been haunting them for the last 3-4 years, just because they haven't been able to pick themselves up. They were waiting for the change on the presidency that happened this year, but the football didn't change, and they didn't make the right calls with the coaches. They didn't pick the right coach, and now they bring in a coach for the last game of the year. That's how desperate they are. I mean, that doesn't speak well of the job they're doing, right? Of how well planified what the plan really is back there. And to talk about Alex Arce, this player from Ameliano, he is 26 years old, and his situation is like many others that I saw in Intermedia, the second division this year, of players that used to play in Libertad, Olimpia, or Cerro Porteño, but just probably don't have the age anymore to get the opportunities there. I mean, in Cerro Porteño, you have Robert Morales this year breaking it. I mean, he's about to go to Mexico now. He was one of their best strikers, but he's only 22 years old. I mean, those are the kind of players that you see on those big teams as young strikers. That's why it's really hard for players like Alex Arce and many others to get playing time in the big teams. Those teams don't usually wait for you, and when you have an injury, you have to look for another team. That's what kind of happened to Alex Arce, which had a great story this year. He scored so many goals with Ameliano and getting a chance maybe now at the top flight. But for Luqueño, it doesn't look well. I mean, this is a team that's very easy to score on them. Ameliano scored 3 goals on them, and Ameliano had not played a match, an official match in the last 2 months. They only played 2 friendly games against top flight teams to try to get some sort of rhythm right before this match against Sportivo Luqueño. They will play again this Saturday in Defensores del Chaco. I think that all Sportivo Luqueño fans are going to be there supporting this team, trying to put the pressure on Ameliano. But I think the pressure is going to be way more on Sportivo Luqueño. And I want to see how the players handle that situation, because they lost the first leg and now they have to go and try to get as many goals as they can and try to stop Ameliano from scoring, especially Alex Arce, because this is a guy that's very athletic and has shown that he can very easily score on pretty much every team. He has shown it this whole season. So my expectation is actually for Ameliano to finish the job, unless Sportivo Luqueño can really change it around, can turn this story. I mean, it looks like Ameliano is going to be the team. They look way better from the football point of view. They look organized as a club, and they look like they really deserve it. I mean, unfortunately for Luqueño, could be the end of the road for them, and it could be one of their lower points. And I actually think they deserve it. I think they need to start over. I think they need to. They don't even have a stadium right now. They're not taking care of their stuff. So they need to reorganize and regroup. They need to start over from scratch, and maybe going into the second division, as hard as that sounds, could be the key factor for them to come back stronger. Even though we've had teams, Roberto, that have been very big in the first division, have left the first division and are yet to come back, like Atlético Colegiales, for instance, which was a very big team here in the 60s, in the 70s, and they went down in the 90s, and they have yet to come back. Deportivo Capital, Roberto also reminded me, a team that made quite some history in not so long ago, and now they're on the 3rd division. They're going to play on the 3rd division next year. So, I mean, hopefully it's for Luqueño, it's a reality check for them, and hopefully they can build from this. But I've actually waited for that situation to happen over the last 4 or 5 years, and we just haven't had that reaction from them.
The amount of pressure that is going on to this game that could change the fortunes of an entire club is really resting upon Luqueño. They're under tremendous pressure that, like you said, Fede, you don't know if they can come back if they go down. You don't know what could happen. And so they don't want to be in this situation. And obviously they want to go out and win. But I think it'll be a very dramatic weekend for many of these teams, really, for obviously Luqueño, for them to save their kind of legacy, for Ameliano to break the party and hopefully not cause as much chaos in Luque as Ralph had mentioned, but we'll see what happens to them. Olimpia looking to see if they can save face and cap off obviously a horrible year with 2 titles. I mean, that's something at least. And for Cerro to continue their winning ways of capping off a great year for them for 2 titles. So we'll definitely see what happens. It's going to be a fantastic weekend. I'm excited to see it. I'm sure all you guys are also excited to see what happens. And I think this is the best way to cap off. Yeah, I think you can say the final episode of 2021 for us. a wonderful year for all of us. Thank you so much to everyone who has been listening in from obviously either on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the nice comments that we've gotten from social media for those that maybe have been WhatsApp. It's been very much a wonderful year for all of us. I'm so proud of all the achievements that we've done, and hopefully that heading into next year, we can do even better than what we did. So fingers crossed for everything that goes well. And so to close it off, for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, Maria Britos, and Ralph Hanna for the final time in 2021, thank you so much for listening in.